Maybe they think Manafort's somebody they can flip faster. The fact is, this all plays into what my client, the President of the United States, has been saying for quite some time. The judge, in sum and substance, said this is a witch hunt with a tremendous amount of government misconduct attached to it. And you're quite correct. Attorney General Sessions should step up and dismiss this entire investigation.
He said a whole lot in that answer. Rudy Giuliani making the case for the president. Special counsel Bob Mueller facing new criticism that his team is overreaching in its investigation of possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. Judge Andrew Napolitano, senior analyst, judicial, he said, with me now. How you doing?
Good.
On a Monday, nice to see you here.
Good morning.
T.S. Ellis III, great name, by the way.
Yes.
Was challenging the government's case on Friday afternoon, saying this is outside the bounds of what the definition of a special counsel is all about. You're trying to squeeze this guy Manafort in order to get to another target, and that target's the president. You heard it?
Yes.
What did you think?
Nothing. Because it's just the personal opinion of the judge. There's no evidence in the courtroom in front of him to justify that kind of an opinion. It drew enormous headlines over the weekend because it's a political narrative with which the Trump supporters agree. It's probably correct, but it is irrelevant to his ruling on the matter. The matter was Manafort moves to dismiss the indictment against him on the theory that Mueller doesn't have the jurisdiction to prosecute me for bank fraud. The judge says, well, you know, where does the jurisdiction come from? It comes from a letter authorizing it from the appointing authority, Rod Rosenstein, and Mueller has 2 weeks to produce that letter.
Okay, now, so the attorney for Manafort from the very beginning, I believe, on day one, he said this is going to be our defense.
Yes.
You are outside of your bounds.
Yes.
And you're saying that's good for an opinion, but it's not good from a legal standpoint. I understand that. But the judge could still rule this way.
If he
would Manafort be off the hook if that were to happen?
No. If Judge Ellis dismisses this indictment on the theory that Bob Mueller did not have the jurisdiction to prosecute this charge in this venue in Virginia, then the local federal prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia will get an identical indictment from another grand jury, and they will prosecute it.
Okay.
So Manafort will not be out of the woods.
So it was a big headline, but you're not thinking legally it is that significant. That's what
I'm thinking politically it's profoundly significant because it gave the president a handle. But legally, it's of no significance at all. Okay. And Judge Ellis, who's a very experienced and wise trial judge, knows that.
Okay. Rudy Giuliani would sit here and argue, go ahead and subpoena us. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but if you do, we're going to take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. You can't prosecute a sitting president.
I don't blame him.
Based on the makeup of the court, can he win that?
No. I don't blame him for making that argument. That's his job to make it, and he's been making it very extensively over the weekend. But history shows that presidents, when subpoenaed by grand juries, one way or another, do comply. Ronald Reagan was once subpoenaed to testify in a criminal case, and he testified. George H.W. Bush was subpoenaed to testify in a criminal case, and he testified. So I think that Rudy will lose that argument, but I don't blame him for making it, and I don't blame him for saying we'll go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Reagan did his testimony in written form, correct?
That I don't know. I have an image of George H.W. on the witness stand. I do not have an image of Reagan.
Giuliani's making the case that Reagan was allowed to submit his answers in writing.
Well, Bill Clinton, when subpoenaed by the grand jury investigating Whitewater, entered into an agreement for a taped deposition, which was then played back on all the news channels as they existed at the time, and it was also played before the grand jury. When Richard Nixon had his tapes subpoenaed, he resisted. Supreme Court 9-zip, turn him over.
Last point. General Sessions, you just heard it from Rudy Giuliani. They're putting a lot of pressure on him to step up, in the words of the former mayor, and dismiss all of this.
He can't. He's recused from it. The recusal is irreversible.
Okay, they're making a case repeatedly. Alan Dershowitz is saying, fight the subpoena. You got a much better chance of fighting this thing in a legal way through the courts as opposed to sitting down with a team of prosecutors who are looking to nail it.
I agree with Professor Dershowitz on that, but I think ultimately the president will lose on the subpoena fight because the theory is nobody is above the law. And if he's subpoenaed to testify, he has to go. He doesn't have to answer. He can invoke the Fifth Amendment, which will be harmful politically, but it'll be prophylactic legally. It won't harm him at all legally.
Someone's
round and round this goes.
Someone is right.
Well, you know, the law is an inexact science. Rudy and I disagree. It doesn't mean that I'm right and he's wrong. It just means that we're looking at this differently. He has a client to represent, and he's protecting that client and advancing the client's interests as he sees best.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Again, okay.